testimony of a satisfied man. The testimony of a satisfied man. In this day and time in which we live, Pastor Robinson, there is a great lack of satisfaction. But all of our comforts and creature comforts we enjoy, people still have a tendency, don't seem to get enough satisfaction. Whether it be in things or in each other. And as I thought about this thing of a satisfied soul, when you look at this matter of being satisfied, you discover in this 21st century, this is the contemporary struggle that all of us have at one time or another. You can't say amen, say ouch. Most of us, if not all of us, at one time or another, struggle with how to be satisfied. We know how to do a lot of things, but we don't know how to be satisfied and content. Enough is never enough. Somebody looking at me right now don't know anything about your business. You just got paid a good check on Friday and you still want some more. Have I got a witness? Not enough satisfaction. Back in the day, there was an old school rhythm and blues song that captures the essence of this lack of satisfaction. Now, you won't find it in the Baptist hymnal, but it has some good ideology. And I'm not sure who wrote it, but I believe it was Otis Redding. And over the lyrics said, I can't get me no satisfaction. Oh, now some of y'all. And he said, Brother Bill, I done tried, and I done tried. And I done tried, but hey, I just can't get me no satisfaction. Oh, y'all come on, let's have church. You know some of y'all knew where to find it on every vendor now. And you know, before I move too far off of these lyrics, let me just give my appreciation for the strong renditions of the songs of Zion from that choir. Give yourselves a hand. You guys done a great job. Brought the preacher up a warm spot, and I enjoyed that. And I'm thinking about Otis and those songs that he sung and put out. But moreover, when I heard this choir singing, I enjoyed the singing of the choir. But when I looked over on the instruments, the man with the keyboard, the man on the drums, I was elated when I saw Pastor Bill over there working them strings on that electric guitar. This preacher can preach and play. Amen. He puts all of himself into it. So I imagine you knew where to find I can't get me no. And that's the MO and the attitude of some of these 21st century Christians. They're short on satisfaction. Just can't get me no satisfaction. Lack of satisfaction is running rampant even among Christians. Case in point, the divorce rate among Christians is higher than it is among non-believers. Simply because wives and husbands can't get satisfaction in each other. There are cases where people have been together 20, 30, 40 years, now getting divorces. No longer satisfied with each other, one or the other. In the outline for discussion, outline 4, those of you who are in Sunday school, 4 and 5, it gives a strong emphasis about husbands loving their wives like Christ loved the church. And then wives respecting and submitting themselves. And I'm of the opinion, if you love your wife like Christ loved the church, she won't have no problem in submission and respect. Hello, somebody. But in the day and time of which we live, wives no satisfaction with husbands. Husbands no satisfaction with wives. And bid me the footnote here. I thought I appreciated my wife. I thought I loved my wife there, but when I was laying on that garner in ICU and they were talking about unblocking my heart, and the thought came into my mind that, maybe I won't see Von Seal again. Then I was satisfied with her like I'd never been before, Pastor. Testimony. They say confession is bad for the reputation, but it's good for the soul. So. Lack of satisfaction in and around and everywhere. Children can't find satisfaction in parents. Parents, no satisfaction in their children. No satisfaction with teachers. No satisfaction at the schoolhouse. No satisfaction at the state house. And definitely no satisfaction at the White House. No satisfaction perhaps in your house, my house. And yes, even at times, no satisfaction at the church house. All around, so much dissatisfaction. Lack of satisfaction all around, over there and everywhere. Too many folk with Otis Redding mentality. I just can't get me no, hey, satisfaction. I can't hear nobody. Don't y'all leave me by myself. And so for the next few moments, Sister Shelley, I want to walk around this text because the Apostle Paul here has found the secret of satisfaction for the believer. Paul was content and satisfied because he saw life from God's point of view. In this text read for your hearing, we find nuggets of inspiration in the confession and testimony of a satisfied man. This letter to the church at Philippi is Paul's liberation with this church. And as he pens this letter to this church at Philippi, he's in the spirit of gratitude, contentment, and satisfaction. As he draws nigh to a close, after previously giving instructions as to how these members ought to behave toward God and toward one another. If your behavior is in line with God, then you'll be in line with your brothers and sisters. Paul here moves to generosity, and he generously expresses his gratitude to this thoughtful and kind church for the gifts they have bestowed upon him and perpetually sent his way while he's incarcerated. They did this during one of the most trying times in this man's life, his incarceration by the Roman penal system. And my brothers and sisters, keep it 100, it's a nice thing to know you are loved and appreciated. Not only when you are on your feet, but moreover when the circumstances around you have shifted and they have changed from good to bad and from bad to worse. It's good to know you are appreciated, loved and cared for and thought about. In my dilemma, when I called Sister Williams, whom y'all call Bevo and Mama B, after sharing with her what had happened to me, and she expressing her concern and gratitude, then she went to work on me for not letting her know what had happened and for me not slowing down and taking care of myself. All she was trying to do is tell me, Negro, I appreciate you, but you need to try to take care of yourself and quit running here, there, and everywhere. Hey, I'm just keeping it 100. So it's good to know you are appreciated, cared about. I was fussing at my wife this morning when we was in the motel room and I was trying to get my little message that Easter speak together. She said, I think you need to go downstairs and get some breakfast and take your medicine and get your... And I, in my normal response, I was getting ready to get on her, but as I thought about my previous encounter, I said, maybe you're right. It's good to know that you are appreciated, cared about, and loved. So the Apostle Paul here was moved deeply by the benevolence and generosity of this church. But then he also realized that people don't have to be nice. And when they are nice, they don't necessarily have to be nice to you. And when people are nice, the least you can do is say thank you. For any young people that may be in our midst, and my daughter's a college student, but I want to tell you, baby, elementary manners and kindergarten respect will open doors you can't knock down with a master's degree. I don't care how gifted, how talented you are, somebody has to give you the opportunity to exercise your gift and your skill. And when they do that, the least you ought to say is say, thank you. So several times in this narrative and in this passage, this apostle here expressed his contentment and his gratitude and his satisfaction by referencing what he had learned from his experience with Jesus Christ that led him to be content, to be thankful, to be satisfied. And so in essence, he gives to us testimony of a satisfied man. He's not only talking as a man that is satisfied with his relationship with his fellow believers, but moreover, he's talking about his contentment and satisfaction in Jesus Christ. You see, if you're content and satisfied in Jesus Christ, in everything, it makes it hard to grumble and complain about anything. So Paul shares with us testimony of a satisfied man. Paul is not a man who has allowed the episodes he has experienced in his relationship with Jesus Christ to go cascading over his head without it sinking into his heart and being digested in his spirit. He knows how to be thankful. He knows how to be satisfied. And so over and over again, and I'm going to be redundant here, Paul talks about what he's learned and what he knows about being satisfied and content. Listen to how he talks in verse 11. He says, not that I speak in regards or in need, for I've learned in whatsoever state I'm in to be content. And I don't mean no harm here, but I think us as 21st century Christians with all the creature comforts that we have less than what our foreparents had. And then we are less thankful. They were grateful on Sunday morning. They didn't have PowerPoint screens and PA systems and padded pews, you know. They were in that old down-home church with a potbelly stove. And in the summertime like this, they didn't have the central air like we got. They opened the windows and fanned the flies with the funeral home fans. Somebody here ought to know what I'm talking about. And we as African Americans, and I'm getting away from my text here, God has brought us a mighty long way. He brought us all the way from the cotton field. The athletes being paid millions on football fields. He brought somebody from cotton sack to a Cadillac. Cotton jeans to Mercedes-Benz. From neck bones to T-bones. Yet we are less thankful, less grateful. As a people, as an ethnic group, as people of color and ebony hue, we are living better now than at any time we ever been in this country. I don't care about Trump being in the White House. We leave here today, go home, there's television in every room, flat screens. People won't come to church and got 3 or 4 cars sitting in the driveway. I'm keeping it 100. God has blessed us. Paul says, listen, I know how to be abased. I know how to abound everywhere in all things. In essence, he says, I'm fully aware as how to deal with the unseemly circumstances that come in my life. Why, Paul? Because I've learned how to be content in whatsoever state I find myself in. I've learned how to be full. I've learned how to be hungry. In whatsoever state, whatever the situation, right, wrong, or indifferent, the good, the ugly, or the bad. Now, I'm not talking about being a defeatist. But all I'm saying is when trouble or adversity comes in our life as Christians and believers in the Lord Jesus Christ, We need to learn how to be content and say, Lord, it's in your hands. And not just quote all things are working together for good, but believe it and get it down in your soul. So like Paul, I've learned, not as a preacher, but as a man, to be content and satisfied in Jesus Christ. Good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. These last couple of years, I myself had to come to grips with how to be satisfied in Jesus regardless of circumstances, regardless of situation. I've endured a stroke, cancer, and recently a heart attack. Previous to these events, I never had a serious sick day in my life. Always had been strong and healthy, no need for doctor's care or medicine. I want to just put a footnote here. I don't care how you are today. You don't know what tomorrow holds. You can go to bed tonight and feel like you're on top of the world. And wake up in the morning and it feels like the world is on top of you. This thing hit me and turned my world upside down. I became weak, needy, and helpless. Couldn't even dress myself. On occasion at the hospital, they had to dress and undress me. Pastor Bill, they put this little gown on you that seemingly alters your manhood. All your backside is out on display. I believe every hospital, Sister Shelley, has a department named after this little gown. I see you. Sonia, ain't that funny? But the point I'm making is, in my adversity, I had to realize the sovereignty of God and my total dependence on Him. I don't care how strong you are, men, how much money you got, education, influence, power, or prestige, where you work or where you live. There are some things that can happen in life only God can fix. Therefore, you come to the point that you're totally dependent, satisfied in Him. Because of my relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm satisfied. I'm not caught up in the what if and what is. You see, when a person is grateful and thankful, it don't take much to be satisfied. Paul says, I know both how to abound, suffer need. In other words, Paul says, I'm content in that I've experienced and what I've learned. And when he says, in what I've learned, the apostle has seemed to paint a picture of a student who's been enrolled in some school of higher learning. And when I say higher learning, I'm not talking about Princeton or Yale or Harvard or Baylor or Texas University or OU. No. Or any of these other Ivy League schools we deem so relevant for our formal education. And daughter, granddaughter, I'm not knocking education. You go ahead and get your terminal degree. But trust in the Lord. With all thine heart. And don't lean on thine own understanding. I don't care if you're a 4.0 student. But in all thy ways, acknowledge Him. And He shall direct your path. There's nothing wrong with the imperial knowledge that's gained from these institutions. It's all right to graduate magna summa cum laude, but it's better to graduate like me. Thank you, Lord. Paul is not talking about the type of learning that filters out of these type of institutions. No. But now bid me the footnote and drop this background nugget on Paul. Paul had been enrolled in the best higher learning institutions that was offered in his day and time. At one time he was engulfed and he was saturated in formal education. His head had really rubbed up against a college wall. He sat under the most prolific minds and philosophers of his time. He sat at the feet of Gamaliel. So he has unimpeachable formal training. Paul, before his encounter with Jesus Christ, According to worldly standards, he was a very accomplished man. Let me quickly run down to you his M.O., his rap sheet, if you will, on his worldly accomplishments. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees, considered to be a leading, upstanding man in his community. He was a man about town. He held dual citizenship. He was a prominent Jew as well as a Roman citizen. He could operate in Rome as well as he could Jerusalem. Authorized to persecute whomever he chose. He was a very powerful, influential, prestigious individual. That was his standing in the secular arena from a worldly viewpoint. But then one day, while on the Damascus road, riding on his beast with documents to go persecute whom he will and do irreparable harm to the church, he met Jesus. Anybody in here ever met Jesus? On the road to Damascus. And a light brighter than the noonday sun knocked him off his beast. He heard a voice out of that light saying, Saul, that's before he became Paul, why persecute thou me? Jesus is asking this heathen, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? Even as a heathen, he recognized somebody of authority was speaking to him. Who are you, Lord? And the voice came back and said, I'm Jesus whom thou persecutest. Don't you know it's hard for you to kick against me? And so after that encounter, he said, what will you have me to do, Lord? And that ought to be the question to everybody that meets Jesus Christ. What will you have me to do? He converted him and made him a champion for the cause of Christ. After his encounter with Jesus Christ, after his encounter with the Holy Divine, after his rendezvous with Jesus, he severed himself from all the worldly things he had accomplished. You'll find what he said for you Bible readers when you get home. You'll find out what he said about these things he had accomplished in Philippians chapter 3, verse 7. He says, what things, let the church say, what things? What things? That will gain to me. I counted loss for Christ. When you add up my influence, my prestige, and my power and my wealth, I count them all as dung in comparison to the excellency of the knowledge of Christ. In other words, outside of the Christ event, I count these things as what the cow left in the pasture. I count them as dung. Why, Paul? That I might win Christ and be found in him. In other words, I'm fully satisfied in Jesus. So then when Paul says I've learned and know, again I say he's not talking about the type of knowledge that brings about worldly fame and gain. Paul is not painting that kind of a picture because Paul is well aware that earthly knowledge is no comparison to the knowledge you gain when God has you sitting at the wisdom table of his divine instruction. Sometimes the wisdom table is not an educational setting. I heard in the Sunday school some snippets about the things that God can use adversity and hardships in your life to bring you to where you need to be in him. I heard a brother, I think it was Brother Blair, that was giving testimony about him leaving a certain school district. And my wife and I just started fidgeting because she was a part of that. She was a high-profile principal from California, and so the intelligentsias of the certain school district decided she was making too much money and everything, and she was an outsider, and they decided that they wanted to bother her, and the Holy Ghost had to shackle me and keep my hands to myself. I wanted to go down to that school board and lay hands on them. So I know what Brother Blair was talking about. But anyway, long story short, the way she carried herself and smiled and demonstrated her belief in the Lord took care of them. She had to go out on medical retirement. And some of the people that dogged her out, Marcia, she still has a job. They don't have a job. I praise and I thank God. Don't worry about it, Brother Blair. God's got your back. Paul is an object lesson of a conscientious student of God. He's a satisfied soul on display in the midst of adversity. He was not an unattended student in his learning experience with God. My brothers and sisters, God has laid bare before us the way to live life according to his divine instructions and direction. And yet, I'm going to lose my amens here. When it comes to the instructions of God, so many of us flunk an open book test. I like what I see here in this ministry of Pastor Robinson. You do a lot of teaching here, illustrations and what have you. I saw that board in your room. Those 5 letters that spell Bible, B-I-B-L-E, could be viewed as an acronym, meaning basic instructions before leaving Earth. Not as in social intelligence, if you didn't already know. An acronym is a word or a name form as an abbreviation of the initial component in a full-blown phrase or name. Nowadays, it's common for companies or corporations or other entities to use what they call acronyms, shorter version to identify themselves rather than the full spell-out name of their organization. The computer forerunner company, IBM, is an acronym for International Business Machines. Have I got a witness here, Pastor Robinson? I sat on a board called OJPM, which is Oklahoma Jail Prison Ministries. TWA, Trans World Airlines. CVS is Consumer Value Stores. AT&T is American Telephone and Telegraph. FBI is an acronym for Federal Bureau of Investigation. So all of these are examples of acronyms. So the letters that spell out Bible, B-I-B-L-E, could be an acronym as how to live life according to God's way. Basic instructions before leaving earth. Amen. Say, I got it, preacher. Paul was not talking as one that was derelict in his life's experience that he had learned with Jesus Christ. He was not one that was being derelict as God was taking him through the chambers of learning. Every experience in your life is a chamber of learning. And how you respond to that can be a display of your hope and your belief in Jesus Christ. Paul followed God's instructions. He didn't walk away from his assignment without grasping the lesson that God was trying to teach him. What I've discovered, when God is trying to teach you a lesson, you keep flopping, flunking, being hard-headed, he'll enroll you in the school of hard knocks at the graduate level until you learn the lesson that he's been trying to teach you. Paul was a good student. I don't mean to highlight Paul so much as because he was only who he was after his encounter with Jesus Christ. Later in life, as he's exiting off the scene of this life, he leaves his commencement address and his God-taught lessons in life. He says, I'm now ready to be offered. The time of my departure is at hand. He's in jail, y'all. He says, I fought a good fight. I've kept the faith. May have lost my reputation. May have lost some money along the way. May have lost a few friends. May have lost some benefits. May have lost my health. But glory be to God, I've kept the faith. I finished my course. Paul didn't drop out or play hooky in the school of life. He was a good student, God's divine course of life. So as I get ready to close, he writes to us and leaves on record his experience of how to be satisfied in God. In every experience, Paul looked for the nuggets of information and revelation that God was trying to lay bare on the arena of his life. He was well aware, and I want you to be well aware of whatever experience that you go through, right, wrong, or indifferent. No matter how bleak, no matter how dreary, dismal, but mournful or painful, or how insidious it may have seemed to be at the moment. With God behind every dark cloud has a silver lining. I used my experience in the hospital to witness to a nurse and a doctor that was from Thailand. These people, these Asians, they have extremely great skills in dealing with the cardiac and internal medicine. But some of them don't know Jesus. And I thought about my mama a few years ago. That she lived Jesus. And I mean, everything was about Jesus. In fact, when I was growing up, my mama, she had a drug problem. She drugged me to Sunday school. She drugged me to BYP. She drugged me to Wednesday night prayer meeting. She drugged me everywhere. And I thank God for it. I was laying there, Brother Robinson, in that ICU unit. I asked that doctor, did he believe in Jesus Christ? He dropped his head. He said, very few patients had ever asked me that. He said, but for your information, Reverend, I started believing in Jesus Christ long ago when I started going through these surgeries. And I knew that working on a human being, I had to have his guidance, his instruction. Then during that time, his nurse came in and said, I'm glad to know that you are a believer of Jesus Christ. He says, I don't get to talk about that much here. He says, I witnessed and married a man that was the member of a motorcycle gang, and I led him to Christ, and now we have a ministry winning other cyclists to Christ. Wow. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We stand in the serving line and talk to them about the Dallas Cowboys or whoever your favorite team may be. We talk about everything except Jesus Christ. Standing in the line with a heathen, you may be the only sermon that this individual ever has. You don't have to talk about the things, the miracles that happen in this book. If you've been saved from your sins, you are a testimony, a living testimony. You are a miracle in progress. Don't be ashamed to share Jesus Christ in no setting. Whether you're in the hospital, whether you're at work, wherever you are. Be a witness. Be a testimony of a satisfied soul. We have a tendency to grumble and complain and even sometimes blame God when trouble arises in our lives. But you need to know that God can bring good out of any bad situation. And instead, we should praise and honor God and see our problem as an opportunity to glorify Him. Him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the mighty power that worketh in us through Him. So Paul, in this marvelous discourse, he gives to us testimony of a satisfied man. He says, in whatsoever state I find myself, I've learned how to be content. Now understand, church, he's saying this in the worst situation. He's on lockdown. He's in jail, awaiting execution on a chopping block, simply for preaching the gospel. He's not in jail for selling drugs. He's not in jail for being involved in a drive-by shooting. He's in jail for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And ever since that faithful encounter with Jesus Christ, Paul has been globetrotting across Asia Minor with the gospel on his lips, proclaiming and preaching and encouraging and lifting up the brokenhearted, Here he is now at the twilight of everything. His world is turned upside down. And we sometimes, as fellow believers, a little rain will fall and say, well, they can get by without me today. He's on lockdown, Reverend. He has a destiny with a chopping block. And yet he's content. And he's satisfied. Well, in saying all this, Paul is moved from his testimony. And this is the part I love. To the testimony of Jesus Christ. Because of Jesus Christ, the testimony of a satisfied man or woman shouldn't stop with Paul. Because of the Christ event in your life, in my life. This testimony of a satisfied soul ought to be in the heart of every believer who professes to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And the reason you ought to be a living testimony in a satisfied soul, he saved your soul and made you whole. I got one or two or three, maybe three more reasons. He woke you up this morning. Number two, he woke you up this morning. Number three, he woke you up this morning. Number four, he woke you up. He didn't have to do it, but he did. Please God and satisfied his desire to send his son into a lost, dying world to save a wretch like you and me. One day, Lord, when heaven was filled with his praises, and sin was black as could be, had his grips on you and me. Jesus Christ, the strong Son of God, being in the form of God, took on the form of a servant, made in the likeness of you and me. In other words, he became like us in order that we could become like him. Wrapped himself in the guise of sinful flesh. Caught a 9-month nature train. Left the realms of glory. Came down through burning worlds and flaming galaxies and 42 generations. All the way from glory to the dark, sinful lowland of sorrow. Just to save a wretch like you and me. Well, I'm getting ready to close now. You know, a Black Baptist preacher, he closes about 3 times. He says, I'm on my way to my seat. He's got about 15 more minutes. When he says, I'm closing now, he's got another 7. When Jesus came all the way from glory to the lowland of sorrow. I grew up in a little country church down in Bristol, Oklahoma. We had about 4 members and a barking dog. But the pastor's imagination, he painted that picture and said that when Jesus came from heaven all the way to earth, that he could have stopped off on the sun. He had a much brighter world. But he saw you and me in the darkness of sin, and he kept on coming. Could have got off on Venus and had a more beautiful world. But he saw you and me in the ugly grips of sin. And so he kept on coming. Could have stopped off on Jupiter. Had a much bigger world. But he saw you and I had a bigger need. So he kept on coming. Till he got to the lowland of sorrow. Born in the manger. Baptized in the wilderness. Died between 2 thieves. Walked dusty dirt roads that you might walk golden streets. Bear a cross that you might wear a crown. Drink vinegar mingled with gall that you might one day drink the sweet waters of life. He went into the grave that we might come out of the grave. Somebody said he was wounded for my transgression. You were bruised for your iniquity. Chastisement of our peace was laid upon him. And with his stripes, not the doctor, not the ICU, but with his stripes, we're healed, delivered, and set free. Therefore, like Paul, I'm satisfied with Jesus down in my heart. I'm satisfied today because living he loved me. Then died he saved me. Buried he carried my sins far away. But thank God he didn't stop there. Rising he justified me. What did he do for you, Benson? He freed me forever. And one day, he's coming back for me. Oh, glorious day. One of these days, he's going to reach into the wardrobe of eternity, wrap a rainbow around his shoulder, and come walking down the Milky Way. Put one foot on the land and one foot on the sea. And time that had been won't be no more. He's going to crystallize time on the banks of eternity. And with archangel thunder, the dead in Christ. I don't know what they're doing out there at them graveyards on this Memorial Day weekend, but one day, the dead in Christ is going to rise first. And those of us that are alive and remain, hey, we're going to be changed. Maybe in a wheelchair, maybe on a walker, maybe on a cane, but thank God, hey, I'm going to be changed. Drop off this mantle of flesh. Bid farewell to every fret and fear. Wipe my weeping eyes and read my title clear to my mansion in the sky. Going over yonder where the wicked will cease from trouble. No more doctors, no more IVs, no more blood draws, no more ICU. Every day will be Sunday. Sabbath will have no end. Always howdy, howdy, and never goodbye. I'm through now, but my soul is happy. Come get your people. I'm through.